Hi, we're up in the attic again. This is Pat Stewart, and this time we're talking about soap making. Because if you're not selling raw milk and you've got a ton of milk to use, what else can you do with it? Well, you can make cheese for your family, and that's another video. And there are so many other things, and I'm better at making soap than I am about making cheese, that I'm just going to introduce you to the cheese making, but I really want to focus more on soap making. And then the other thing you could do would actually be what I've started doing, which is goat milk candles. So, because we have bees as well. So beeswax and goat milk go together to make a really nice candle. So that's another thing you can do with the milk. But I've got a video to show you about how I make my soap. Let me talk to you a little bit about the journey that I've been on and what I can forewarn you about. Okay? When I started making goat milk soap, I was terrified. The whole concept of playing with lye scared the bejeebers out of me. I was born on Friday the 13th in the middle of a blizzard, so if there was going to be a way for something to go wrong, I was going to be the one to do it. I had high school chemistry. I didn't blow up the lab, so I knew how to be careful, and I also knew the basics of making soap, which is you take an alkaline and you add a fat and you get a process called saponification. And that is how you make soap. Saponification is actually the word for making soap. So I decided to endeavor on making goat milk soap. I never made regular soap. I would advise, if you want to, make a batch of regular soap first. It's easier, it's more forgiving. Although I found my milk to be pretty forgiving. And I've learned to adjust when I've blown it. So if you blow a batch and you know how you blew it, you can melt it down and fix it, or you can grind it up and use it for a laundry powder. And I can tell you a little more about that later. But the keys to making goat milk soap are: one, keeping the milk as cool as possible. When I get my milk in, I pour it into a container that's the size that I want it at. I pour in as much milk as I need, which for my milk, my recipe is 48 ounces. I weigh out 48 ounces of milk. I put a lid on it, and I put it in the freezer. And I have a dedicated freezer that's milk products. At least it started out that way. Then when I want to make milk, I bring it up a couple hours early, hopefully the night before, and I let it start to thaw. Because I don't like it to be a frozen block of frozen ice. I don't like it to be a frozen block of milk ice, but I do like it slushy. I like a lot of other liquid around it to help dissolve the lye. I then measure out my milk. I measure out the rest of my oils, as the video I'm about to show you will illustrate. And you can be very good and pour them into their own separate containers. I find that I need to use a lot of spatulas to get everything out of that, and I'm not so good at that. So I have started to just be a little bit lazy and pour everything into one vat. That's my way of doing it. I've been doing it for 20 years. If you want to do what I did, which is be really anal and pour each oil into their own container until you get used to things, that makes a lot of sense. I did that for like 12 years. I figure out what kind of oil or what kind of scent I want to use. I use essential oils. If you use fragrance oils, make sure that they don't heat it up. There are some chemicals in fragrance oil that will cause it to get really hot and burn your milk, or to set up really fast. We don't want it to set up so fast that we can't get it into the mold. So learn about the different fragrance oils you're going to use and what their properties are. I don't use any fragrance oils. I only use essential oils. That's my choice. All of the things that I put into my soap are natural. I don't use any artificial preservatives in my soap. I don't use any artificial colorants in my soap. Everything comes from nature. I figure I've got this wonderful, prime, natural goat milk soap, goat milk. Why should I put chemicals into it that don't come from nature? But that's just me. I melt my oils down to almost all liquid. If it's summertime and they're all already liquid, that's cool. I like to have things a little bit solid, but that's just me. I'm used to dealing with a solid oil. I don't want it to be all solid though, because then it will set up too fast and I won't be able to get things blended and I won't trust the result. So some people actually are now making their lye up, making their lye mix up, making up their oil mix, and then bringing both to temperature of room temperature. That's fine. I don't have the patience. I don't have the dedicated space to do that. I have 6 cats in the house. If I leave milk with lye laying around, somebody's going to check it out and be dangerous. So I don't do that. But after my oils are melting, not to the point of melted, I then add slowly. I fill up the tub of my sink with cold water. I put the melted or thawed milk in there, and then I weigh out the amount of milk then I weigh out the amount of lye that I need, which for my recipe is 11.9 to 12 ounces. It depends somewhat upon the time of year. It also depends upon whether I goofed and got a little too much other oil in there. But there is such a thing called superfatting, which is where you have undissolved, unreacted fat. Nigerian milk is going to automatically be superfatted, and generally they recommend about 5% superfat before it goes rancid. That's about what I estimate we have. I don't test it, but that's worked out well for me. So my recipe comes from a book by Susan Miller Cavich, which has a lot of extra liquid in it that you might find out what we refer to as the soap calculators online. It has worked for me. I'm not going to mess with it. You can choose otherwise. So I'm going to slowly add that lye and stir it. I'm going to make sure that I've got a well-ventilated space. I am not inhaling the fumes. And I wear glasses, but I also advise that you wear a full face shield. You can use safety glasses. In my experiences, they fog up. A full face shield will protect your whole face from splatter. I only use a spoon just to get that lye mixed up. I don't use my immersion blender. But once that's all dissolved, then I take my vat of oils and I make sure that that has not gotten above 125 degrees. I like mine just above 100 degrees. I can use a thermometer, and if you can use a laser thermometer which shoots an instantaneous temperature, that's wonderful. You can use another dedicated thermometer, but I would dedicate it and not use a thermometer that you might also use elsewhere in the kitchen. You don't want your oils above 125 degrees. I like mine just around 100 degrees. Then slowly pour the milk and lye into the oils, and that's the way it has to be. If you had basic chemistry, you know that you want to control the reaction. So the reactant is the lye, and it is going to cause a reaction which will exude heat by pouring it into the oil. When you pour it in slowly and you're stirring it and it's surrounded by cold water, you're controlling the reaction and keeping the temperature down. If you do the other way around and you add your oil into the lye, you're going to have way more lye trying to react to the available oil, and you're going to get an eruption, and that's really dangerous. So make sure you control the reaction and add the lye milk mixture to the oils and stir them in slowly. Then I put cold water in my lime bucket. Excuse me. I might add a little vinegar to kind of neutralize any reaction that might still be happening there. And then I stir in, and then I'll use my immersion blender. When I used to do it, I stirred by hand, or I used a regular little pitcher blender. That's how we started, because we didn't have an immersion blender. It would take us 3 hours to make a batch. Now I can make a batch in less than an hour from the time I start assembling everything until the time I've got everything put back. So in less than an hour. That's what an immersion blender will let you do. But again, it has to be dedicated to your soap making. You don't want somebody to take a little bit of pudding that's also had some lye mixed in with it. So keep a dedicated immersion blender. You're going to mix it and mix it and mix it. And in the video, you'll actually see the beginning of trace. Trace is where you can start to see a swirl. If you stir the soap up and then you pour it gently over the top of it, you'll start to see a trail where it doesn't immediately dissolve back into the pot. And that's called a trace. A trace is when you can add any essential oils or any colorants that you want to. That's for basic soap. When you play with it more, you can add it at different times. You can use infusions where you've infused your oils with your botanicals. You can add your minerals, whatever you're using, whether clay or whatever, to your oils. That's all up to you. But right now, I'm just talking about basic stuff, right? So you're going to make sure that's thoroughly blended in. You don't have chunks of oatmeal if you're using oatmeal or whatever you're doing. And then carefully, you've got a lined mold. If you're using a regular block mold like I do, that should be already set. You already have it lined with freezer paper, or I use saran wrap. That's just my druthers. If you have a silicone mold, you can just pour it directly to that. If you have a plastic mold that will break down and expose all sides, you can use that. But you're going to pour it in while it's still pourable. If it has formed up really tight, if it's formed a really thick dough, you'll have to push it in. Now, you should be wearing gloves this whole time. You should be wearing a face mask this whole time. Ideally, you're wearing a smock or a lab coat and some kind of protective apron. You'll see in the video, I don't do that. I'm bad. I'm stupid. It was hot that day. Okay? But I try to be very careful. I always, if I do splash myself, and I burned myself 2 times in 20 years. And both of those were a case of I had an itch and my hands had lye on them. I scratched myself and I got myself burned. What we did was just use water to flush off the lye mixture that was on my skin. And then after that was all flushed off, then we used a little vinegar and dabbed it on to stop any further reaction. I never got anything more than a 1st-degree burn. I've been very lucky. All right? The books will tell you to just put vinegar right on it. That's a very strong reaction from a basic lye alkaline thing to an acetic acid. All right? That's going to be a very strong reaction. If you can take that basic reaction and dilute it and dilute it and dilute it with water, which is neutral, then when you add the lye to it, you won't have a stronger reaction. All right? So keep vinegar around, but rinse things off with water first. Best thing, don't put lye on your skin. Don't wear your best clothes, because if you splash them, you're going to have holes in your clothes. You are working with a caustic ash. You are working with a caustic ash. So you need to be aware of that. Once you've got it poured into wherever your mold is, you're going to leave it there for about 24 hours. If it's a very moist day, it's the middle of summer and it's 95% humidity, you might want to leave it there an extra time. Or what I like to do is I actually put wooden risers underneath my mold so the air can get under that and dissipate some of the heat, because that mold will get warm. If you were to put it in a PVC pit, in a PVC pipe, you could feel the heat. It would be very uncomfortable on your hands. I also, sometimes if it's really muggy, I will put a small fan on and very gently blow the air off, but not in any direction where people are going to be standing, because you don't want them to be inhaling the lye vapors. Now, equipment-wise, I like to use stainless steel. I have used enamel, but enamel can chip and you might not know it, and then the acid will go right through it. You can use most plastics. I like to stay away from any plastic that has BPA in it, just because it's already a soft plastic. It's already iffy on chemical components. Why would I want to encourage heat to that? So I use things that are safe, a hard plastic, or I've used silicone. All right. My basic mold is wood, as I said, that's lined. Once it's hardened, you can take it out of the mold, put it on a protective layer. I like to put plastic down, and then cut it. You can freehand cut it with a stainless steel knife. You can cut it with a cheese knife. You can cut it with a piece of cheese wire if you want to. But you don't want to use aluminum in any of the process. Okay? And you can use glass, but you're going to heat it up. And if you drop it, you're going to have broken glass and a caustic mixture. So that's not a good combination. So soap making is not all that difficult. If you're creative, it's a great way to be creative. You decide what your limits are. There's so much more to learn about soap making. I'm not even going to try to teach you how to do it. There's a lot online. There's the Handmaker Soap Guild, Handcrafted Soap Makers Guild, which you could join if you're really into it. As far as making some money at it, I sell mine for $6 a bar, 3 for $15. I have made laundry soap where I take my ground up soap, which wasn't suitable for skin. It could be a little lye heavy, maybe it's a little ugly. The lighter the color of soap, the cooler you've kept the oil mixture and the fat mixture. I grind that up, and then I add 50% soap mixture to a mixture of 50-50 baking washing soda and borax. Both of those things are water softeners. Now, as you can tell by looking at my kitchen backsplash and all the videos you're seeing, we have a lot of rust in our water. So that soap, although it cleans things, it makes the laundry really dingy. If you're on city water, or if you're on fabric softener, you have a water softener, you should be fine using that soap. But if you've got hard water like we do, and we don't have a water softener, then you're probably not going to want to use laundry powder. You can mix that with some coconut oil and make a nice paste that we call a laundry butter. That's a little bit more forgiving in harder water. It's also a great stain remover. When we started selling our soap, it was a struggle. And we wondered whether it was worthwhile or not. We've been really working at promoting the soap for the last 5 years. Income from this year to last year more than doubled. All right. We now have people calling to get us to restock the stores. We're in about 6 different stores right now. We have returning customers coming back to us. I don't want to be a huge company. I just want to have my goats pay for themselves. And I use it as a way for people to understand that small farms are good to the planet. They support a small farm. They're being good to the planet too. That's just my mentality about the soap. I also make a goat milk lotion. I am not going to give you away my little secret, but you can play around. There's lots of different recipes online. You will need to use a preservative in goat milk lotion. I've tried not doing